My entitled sisters demanded that I let them rent out my vacation home for profit. When I refused, their husbands broke in and are now facing charges. Hey everyone, Dwayne here. I never thought I'd be sharing this kind of story, but here we are, involving entitled family members, a beautiful vacation home, and some seriously dumb decisions. Let me start from the beginning. I've worked my ass off for years to afford the life I have now. You know, long hours, shitty bosses, and missed social events. But eventually all that hard work paid off. I bought a vacation home in the mountains. It's my sanctuary, a place where I can escape from the madness of everyday life. It's not just a house, it's my dream come true. My sisters, Alberta and Beatrice, always had a different approach to life. They married young, had kids, and basically lived paycheck to paycheck. Don't get me wrong, I love my nieces and nephews, but my sisters never seemed to understand the concept of hard work. They always looked for the easy way out, and it usually involved mooching off others, mostly me. So when I bought the vacation home, I knew they'd be on my case about using it. And boy, was I right. One Sunday, we were having a family BBQ at our parents' place. Alberta came over to me, all smiles and sweetness, which I knew was a red flag. Hey, Dwayne, I was thinking, wouldn't it be great if we could use your vacation home for a little while? You know, just to get away from the city, she said, batting her eyelashes like it was no big deal. I had a feeling this was coming. I don't know, Alberta. It's my personal space, and I like to keep it private. She pouted, but I stood my ground. I thought that was the end of it, but man, was I wrong. A few weeks passed, and Alberta called me up. Dwayne, I have a fantastic idea. How about we rent out your vacation home on Airbnb? We could split the profits. I couldn't believe my ears. Are you serious? That's my home. I bought it to relax, not to turn it into a business. But think about the money. It would help us out so much, and you'd make some extra cash too, she pleaded. No, Alberta, it's not happening. End of discussion, I said and hung up the phone. I was pissed. How could she even suggest that? The next thing I know, Beatrice is on my case too. She called me, echoing the same idea. Clearly, the sisters had teamed up against me. I told her the same thing, a firm no. They didn't take it well. Over the next few weeks, they bombarded me with guilt trips and sob stories. But I stood my ground. It's my house, my rules. I thought they'd eventually give up, but they didn't. One weekend, I decided to head up to my vacation home for a break. When I arrived, something felt off. The front door was slightly ajar. My heart raced as I pushed it open and stepped inside. The place was trashed. Furniture overturned, items scattered everywhere, and it reeked of booze and cigarettes. It was clear that someone had been partying hard. Then I heard voices from the back room. I stormed in to find Alberta's husband, Chuck, and Beatrice's husband, Tony, lounging around like they owned the place. They were drinking beer and laughing, completely oblivious to my presence. What the fuck are you doing here? I shouted. They looked up, shocked. Oh, hey, Dwayne. We thought you wouldn't mind, Chuck said nonchalantly. Are you kidding me? Get the hell out of my house. I was fuming. They tried to argue, saying they just wanted to enjoy the place for a weekend. I wasn't having any of it. I called the cops right there and then. They were arrested for breaking and entering, and I pressed charges. It was a nightmare. My sisters were livid, blaming me for their husband's stupidity. But I didn't care. They crossed a line, and they had to face the consequences. The news of the break-in and arrests spread like wildfire through our family and social circles. My parents were devastated, and my sisters were furious. They kept calling and texting me, begging me to drop the charges. They even tried to get our parents to intervene, but I was done. Enough was enough. Alberta and Beatrice showed up at my place one evening, demanding that I speak to the police and clear things up. They tried to play the family card, saying that family should always come first. I looked them straight in the eyes and said, "Family should respect each other. You and your husbands violated my trust and my privacy. This is on you." They left in a huff, but I felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time in years, I felt like I had control over my life and my property. The court date came, and Chuck and Tony were found guilty of breaking and entering. They got community service and had to pay for the damages to my house. It wasn't much, but it was a small victory for me. After the dust settled from the court case, things were incredibly awkward between my sisters and me. Family gatherings were tense, and the air was thick with unspoken resentment. It felt like every dinner, every birthday, and every holiday was a battlefield where we were all armed with our silent grudges. I remember one particular family dinner at my parents' house. We were all seated around the table, the smell of roast chicken filling the air, when Alberta decided to break the silence. "Dwayne, we need to talk about what happened," she said, putting down her fork and looking me dead in the eyes. I sighed, already feeling my blood pressure rise. "What's there to talk about, Alberta? Your husband broke into my house. That's not something you just to talk about and move on." Her face turned red, but she pressed on. "You could have handled it differently. We're family, Dwayne. You didn't have to get the police involved." That was it. I couldn't hold back any longer. "Are you fucking kidding me? They trashed my place. They broke in and acted like it was their own personal frat house. What did you expect me to do? Give them a high five and join the party?" The room went silent. My parents looked horrified. Beatrice was on the verge of tears, and Alberta just stared at me, her jaw clenched. "Dwayne, we're sorry," Beatrice finally whispered. "We didn't mean for things to go this far. Chuck and Tony, they're idiots, but they didn't think you'd react like that." "Well, they were wrong," I said, my voice calmer now, "and they needed to learn that there are consequences to their actions. If you two can't see that, then maybe we have a bigger problem than just this incident." From that point on, the atmosphere was heavy, but at least the air was clear. I made it crystal clear that my vacation home was off limits forever. No more requests, no more negotiations. It was my sanctuary, and that was that. Surprisingly, the whole ordeal brought me closer to some other family members. My cousin, Alex, reached out to me a few days after the court verdict. He invited me out for a drink, and we ended up spending hours at a local bar, talking about everything that had happened. "Dude, I can't believe they pulled that shit," Alex said, shaking his head as he sipped his beer. "You did the right thing, pressing charges. They needed to be taught a lesson." "Thanks, man," I replied, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. I just couldn't let them get away with it. They've taken advantage of me for years, and this was the last straw. We bonded over stories of family drama and the frustrations of dealing with entitled relatives. Alex told me about his own struggles with our extended family, and it felt good to know that I wasn't alone in this. As weeks turned into months, I noticed a shift in how some family members treated me. Those who had always been respectful and supportive became even closer. My aunt, who had always been kind of distant, started inviting me over for dinner more often. She even shared some old family recipes with me, something she'd never done before. On the flip side, my sisters and their husbands kept their distance. They were civil, but there was an unspoken understanding that our relationship would never be the same. And honestly, I was fine with that. I didn't need their toxicity in my life. One evening, my parents invited me over for a private dinner. They wanted to talk about everything that had happened and how we could move forward as a family. I was nervous, but I agreed to go. As we sat down at the dinner table, my mom spoke first. "Dwayne, your father and I have been talking a lot about what happened. We want you to know that we're proud of you for standing up for yourself." I was taken aback. I hadn't expected that. "Thanks, Mom. That means a lot. We also think it's time for your sisters to grow up and take responsibility for their actions," my dad added. "We've always tried to keep the peace in the family, but we realize now that sometimes that's not the right approach." I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. I just want everyone to respect each other, you know? I'm tired of being the one who's always taken advantage of. "We understand," my mom said, reaching across the table to hold my hand. "And we're here for you, always." That conversation was a turning point. It felt like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. For the first time in years, I felt like my parents truly understood and supported me. Now, I enjoy my vacation home more than ever. It's my sanctuary again, a place where I can relax without worrying about unwanted guests. I've redecorated a bit, adding some personal touches to make it even more of a retreat. Every time I drive up there, I feel a sense of peace and accomplishment.